Do you think that's just fiction created by the Wachowskis? Trust me, you can see even more disgusting creatures in real life. In this video, you'll find out what parasite hunts people with poor eyesight, who would be glad to eat your brain, and most importantly, what should we fear much more than those monsters from horror movies? Sydney, 1998. 4.5 million people are at risk of catching a serious disease. The authorities urgently appeal to people, asking them to minimize contact with the city's running water, all because of monsters coming from the sewers, Cryptosporidium. If you accidentally swallow them, you'll come down with fever and diarrhea in just 1 week. That's in the case of you having strong immunity. If not, or if you happen to be weak at the time of infection, for instance, suffering from a regular old cold, diarrhea may very well become chronic. You'll start losing up to 25 liters of fluid each day, and soon you'll die from dehydration. Even if you're lucky enough to quickly recover without any consequences, you're still potentially dangerous to society. That's because once having dealt with cryptosporidiosis, some people can keep living with the parasite and pass the infection on to others. There is a solution. To prevent catching it, in most cases, it's enough just to boil your drinking water. As for the next water-dwelling monster, this one is much trickier. Quite often, in the water, you can meet something way more frightening than sharks. Meet Naegleria fowleri, an amoeba that can easily devour your brain. But how? Well, everything starts with an ordinary country trip. You inhale this parasite while swimming in a lake or river, so it enters your body without you even realizing it. You'll remain oblivious for the next few days, but the irreversible process in your body will already be activated. To transmit information, our neurons release different chemicals, including acetylcholine. As a random gift granted by evolution, amoebas are pretty good at recognizing it. So when they get on the nasal mucosa, acetylcholine helps them quickly travel along the olfactory nerve, straight towards your brain. And that's where this creature finds heaven on earth, which cannot be said for you. It's wet and warm inside a human head, just like in the lakes where the amoeba lives and thrives. However, there are no bacteria inside your skull, meaning that the parasite has no familiar food to consume. Eventually, it doesn't come up with anything better than just feeding on your brain. Within a few hours, a human starts vomiting and having convulsions, but emptying the stomach doesn't bring relief. An unbearable headache is followed by fits of delirium or even a coma. As a result, the victim's brain swells, and then it literally stops fitting in the skull. This state is called naegleriosis. A person experiencing this never regains consciousness, and they choke to death. Mortality from this disease is about 97%. The only chance of survival depends on doctors. They have to diagnose the infection in its earliest stages. Sounds pretty impressive, doesn't it? Although there do exist even more detestable intruders. Sometimes monsters sweep into our lives so blatantly that it's hard to believe it can be true, and some of them aim to feast on your eyeballs. If a acanthamoeba comes into contact with your cornea, it instantly starts invading your eye through abrasions. As a result, white patches appear on the eye's surface. There is a treatment, but I doubt you'll like it. Your doctor will scrape your corneal epithelium using a special surgical blade to remove the dead cells, and no general anesthesia. I agree with you, it's gross. But it's important to act promptly, otherwise you may go totally blind. What's interesting is that it may be enough just to put in your contact lenses to get infected. Statistically, that's precisely how 90% of patients caught the illness. I guess this piece of news could make you feel a strong urge to get rid of your contacts. But don't rush out and do that. Let me divert your attention to some other parasites that can penetrate your body through absolutely healthy skin. That's what female dracunculus worms, also known as roundworms, do. They're found in wet places like swamps where they develop in copepods. So if a human decides to go for a walk there, there's a good chance they'll pick up the infection. The parasite's larvae can remain on the body for a long time and get inside through the pores at the earliest opportunity. The problem is that the victim will have no idea something's going on for a whole year. For around 12 months, the worm will roam around your anatomy before finally settling in the subcutaneous tissue of one of your limbs. Soon, you'll have an ulcer there with a worm sticking out from the middle. And that's not the most horrible thing yet. To extract the worm, modern doctors still use the method described in an ancient Egyptian text dating back to the mid-2nd millennium BC. It's about rolling the slowly emerging parasite onto a long, thin stick. This procedure can take up to several weeks. Why so long? To make sure that the worm won't split in half and release toxic fluid into the wound. Afraid of going through this nightmare? Forget about walking around swamps then. Unfortunately, there's no way to protect yourself from the next monster on my list. Mosquito bites. A typical summer thing, right? However, each of them can doom you. The reason is Plasmodium falciparum, the agent of malignant malaria. It's transmitted through the bite of regular old mosquitoes. In 2020 alone, doctors reported 241 million cases of infection. The unicellular parasite enters the human body together with the mosquito's saliva and goes straight to the liver, where it throws a bloodfest. Plasmodium falciparum invades erythrocytes and simply tears them apart, and then proceeds to just gobble up this handmade dinner. It needs just 60 seconds to get ready and attack a new cell. Debris from the infected red blood cells ends up deposited in different organs, the heart, liver, and even brain. The latter leads to the most severe form of the disease, called cerebral malaria, with a mortality rate of nearly 90%. The human in this case painfully dies from hypoxia, which means oxygen starvation, as the infected cells deprive the brain of any air. It's almost impossible to cure cerebral malaria, and those few survivors keep living with neurological disorders for the rest of their days. In addition, they develop behavioral problems and intellectual disabilities. It's believed that malaria is most common in African countries. However, I wouldn't be so carefree. There were cases throughout history when the parasite spread to cooler climates. For example, in the 1820s, during the construction of the Rideau Canal, Canada. And since our planet's climate changes dangerously fast these days, who knows how far this bold, unicellular thing may get. Not to mention that humankind is currently quite helpless in its attempts to find a new and effective way of treating malaria. We haven't witnessed any progress in this field since 2014. Scientists and doctors seem to have reached a dead end. Actually, the scariest horror movie of all time might possibly look like this. Who knows what's really hiding behind this peaceful landscape? Now, let me ask you, what parasites haunt and terrify you the most?